When my parents told me to pick one of my 3 childhood friends to marry, I turned every single one of them down. In my past lives, our family business was basically on the edge of ruin, so my parents forced me into a marriage alliance. The first time around, I chose Serafina Locke. I was absolutely thrilled, foolishly believing that the rest of my days would be pure bliss. But after the wedding, she was literally gone 364 days a year. She did not just make me the laughingstock of high society, she actually died in a massive car crash just to save Crispin Bates. Just like that, I was a young widower. Next, my family set me up with Genevieve Croft. But she did not care about our marriage either, treating me like I was completely invisible. By our 2nd year together, she threw herself into a raging fire and died just to rescue that same Crispin. Thanks to that, everyone labeled me as a cursed husband. So, at age 30, I married my 3rd sweetheart, Aurelia Frost. We kept things respectful and just lived out our lives in total peace. But right before Aurelia peacefully drew her final breath, she squeezed my hand to make one last request. She begged me not to marry her in our next life because she only wanted Crispin, and that was when the ugly truth finally hit me. Every single one of them was madly in love with Crispin. That was why their final words were literally identical carbon copies. "Please do not marry me," they all said. And Crispin? He was just the son of my own family butler. He had totally average looks, zero talent, and spent all his time playing the weak, pathetic victim. Seriously, how did I lose to a guy like that? I had no clue why they loved him so intensely, even to the point of marrying me just to protect him from being targeted by their wealthy families. Wasting entire lifetimes watching their melodramatic devotion to Crispin taught me one absolute truth, and it is a lesson I will never forget. I, Sterling Mercer, am absolutely nobody's background character. If they do not appreciate me, I will throw them straight into the trash. So in this new life, I rejected them all. Instead, I gave my parents a completely different answer. If I have to enter a marriage alliance, I only want Beatrix Vanguard from the powerful Northern Vanguard family. Once they heard that name, my parents looked completely stunned. They demanded to know why on earth I would want to marry an illegitimate daughter from the Northern Vanguard family. Because in my previous life, Beatrix Vanguard eventually became the wealthiest person on the planet, ruling the business world with absolute authority. Since this marriage is purely for business, I might as well get the absolute maximum profit out of the deal. Marrying Beatrix was a win-win move with zero downsides for me. Romance was a fairy tale I had long stopped dreaming about, so even though my parents hesitated, I worked tirelessly to give them every possible reason to agree. The Northern economy is absolutely booming, and the Vanguard Group is the most powerful family there. My parents always wanted to expand our business north but could never establish a real foothold. This marriage gives us the perfect stepping stone. Besides, did they not evaluate Beatrix Vanguard before? They themselves admitted that although she is a young girl, she has uniquely sharp vision and is guaranteed to achieve massive success. Hearing my logical points, my parents were completely convinced. After weighing the pros and cons, they finally decided to respect my wishes. They reached out to the Vanguards and locked down the deal, telling me both families had officially agreed. The big day would happen in just 2 weeks, and hearing that finally put my mind at ease. Since time was short, my parents rushed off to prepare the betrothal gifts. I just sat alone on the couch, lost in a storm of complicated feelings. Just then, the sound of hurried footsteps echoed from the front door. Serafina Locke, Genevieve Croft, and Aurelia Frost burst inside, their eyes locking onto me all at once. "Who did you choose?" they asked in unison. Looking at their tense, nervous faces, I completely blanked out for a second. The 4 of us had grown up together, completely inseparable. These 3 older girls had always treated me like a pampered prince, protecting me in the palm of their hands. Anything I wanted, they got for me, and if I was sad, they took turns cheering me up. If anyone dared to bully me, they would fight to avenge me. But now I see that all that favoritism was just them treating me like a little brother or a pet. I used to think they ran over because they actually wanted me. Oh, how naive I was back then. Now I knew the truth. They were terrified of being chosen, which was why they looked like they were facing a firing squad. Just thinking about it brought a wave of bitter disappointment straight to my heart. My chest tightened so hard I could barely draw a breath. I took a long pause, gathered myself, and answered with a raspy voice. "You will know my choice in 15 days, I said. Since I still refused to tell them, they grew anxious, demanding a straight answer. But before any of them could speak, my phone suddenly rang. It was Bates, young master. Crispin got into an accident and is badly hurt. He is in surgery right now, but they are completely out of private VIP rooms. Please, can you help save my son?" Hearing the butler crying hysterically over the line, Serafina snatched the phone from my hand, her voice cracking with pure panic. "Where is he?" she demanded. Bates, struggling to speak, choked out the hospital name. Serafina hung up, threw a quick line my way, and bolted out the door. "Sterling, do not worry about the hospital. I will handle this little issue. Seeing her run, Genevieve and Aurelia followed her without a single second of hesitation. That hospital is owned by the Crofts, she said, so I will get the director to handle it. Sterling, you just stay here and rest. I know several top specialist doctors and I will get in touch with them immediately. Do not stress, they said, claiming it was all for my own good. But really, it was just a pathetic excuse to run to Crispin. You can see right through it, but back then, I was completely blind. Watching them run off, I could only let out a bitter, self-deprecating laugh. Quietly, I walked back to my room and began packing up every single memory of them. By then, night had already fallen. Checking my phone, I immediately saw a brand new post from Crispin. Just another day being pampered by 3 lovely ladies, the caption read, showing a selfie of him in a luxury ward. He was smiling, sipping on that special soup Aurelia was famous for making. Serafina's pricey watch sat on his table, and Genevieve's designer coat hung nearby. I calmly pressed the like button. I sat staring at those 3 packed boxes for a long, quiet moment. Inside were the 18th birthday gifts from Uncle Locke, Aunt Croft, and Grandpa Frost. Each gift was actually a priceless heirloom from their respective families. Whichever heirloom I kept would decide which family the Mercers would align with through marriage. But now my wedding was set, so it was time to send these back. I called a courier and handed over the 3 packages. Please deliver these to the addresses written here, but only ship them in 15 days, I instructed. Once the courier left, I grabbed all the remaining junk I had organized and dumped it straight in the trash. The sports cars, rare figures, and expensive gifts the girls had given me. All the old photos and videos of our years together. Even the beautiful dresses I had custom made for them. Every single memory of them was now officially buried deep. If you ask me, that is the only way to never repeat those old, disastrous mistakes. I threw myself completely into wedding preparations, shutting out the rest of the world. After a few exhausting days, I walked back into my house and found Serafina and the others fussing over Crispin. One was carefully setting the thermostat. Another was gently blowing on a warm bowl of medicine to cool it down. And the other draped a soft blanket over him, making sure he was warm. I smirked. Their affection was written all over their faces. How did I never see it? Right then, a heavy wave of bitter regret flooded my entire chest. As I stood there, Crispin spotted me and jumped up like a frightened bird, his face filled with sudden panic. Young master, you are home, he stuttered. I will run your bath and get dinner started right away. Please wait. He tried to stand, but Serafina pushed him back down. Crispin is still weak, and your family has plenty of other servants. Sterling, you can easily get someone else to do these minor chores. Genevieve and Aurelia agreed, saying that since Crispin was so badly hurt, I should just let him rest in peace. If your household is actually short-handed, we can easily send some of our own maids over to help you. Just stop ordering him around. I had not said a single word since coming home, yet they made me the bad guy. I let out a quiet sigh and looked down. I know he is just the butler's son, not my servant. I have never forced him to do a single thing. Since you care about him so much, why not take him to your own mansions? Keep him safe there, so you never have to worry again. Crispin's eyes go wide. He drops, kowtowing heavily at my feet, crying heavily. He begs young master, it's all my fault. I shouldn't have slacked off just because I'm sick. Please don't throw my dad and me out. Promising to work immediately, he swears he'll do his chores right now. His forehead turns bruised and red from slamming it, making him look like the biggest victim in the entire universe. Seeing his tragic, award-winning performance, the faces of Serafina, Genevieve, and Aurelia instantly cloud with rage. They rush forward to pull him up, shielding him behind their backs while glaring at me together. With heavy, furious voices, they snap that Crispin did absolutely nothing wrong. According to them, I'm trying to kick him out for no reason, when he's sick and still trying to cook my dinner and draw my bath. It's already bad enough that you don't care about his health, but you actually want to force him out? Do you seriously not have a single ounce of compassion left? Now he's hurt himself even more because of your cruelty. From now on, even if he's sick, he'll feel forced to keep working. You are literally pushing this poor guy to a dead end. If something happens to him, will you finally be happy? Seeing their fierce, protective routine, my face slowly turns ice cold. I didn't even do anything except remind them they could just take him away. Even if I really did bully him, in your eyes, I'm always the spoiled, arrogant monster. So whatever goes wrong in his life, you'll always find a way to blame me. Once my questions hang in the air, the entire room drops dead silent. Look at their stunned faces. A heavy wave of total powerlessness just washes right over me. I completely lose the will to keep talking. I just turn and walk to my bedroom alone. Just as I start to calm down, Crispin knocks on my door carrying a cup of coffee. Looking totally terrified, he whispers that he's so sorry, young master. He begs me not to be mad at the 3 girls, claiming they only spoke out of panic because they were worried about him. It's all his fault we had a fight, so if I want to blame anyone, I should blame him. But having lived through a whole past life, I know this innocent, pathetic act is just a trap to stir up drama. I don't take the bait. I coldly tell him to put the coffee down and get out. Hearing my icy tone, he looks deeply hurt but stays quiet. Then, he fake fumbles on purpose and knocks the hot coffee right over. The boiling liquid splashes all over me, turning my skin bright red and instantly raising painful blisters. Groaning in pain, I push Crispin away while he holds a tissue, pretending he actually wants to help me clean up. Crispin uses my slight push to throw himself backward, slamming his forehead right against the sharp edge of the desk. Splitting his head wide open, his dramatic crying and loud wailing instantly echo through the entire house. Before I can even process what's happening, Serafina, Genevieve, and Aurelia kick the door wide open and storm inside. Finding Crispin on the floor bleeding, the three of them absolutely lose their minds, and Genevieve roughly shoves me out of the way. Serafina is the first to rush to his side to help him up, while Aurelia uses both hands to cover his bloody wound. Shielding Crispin, they carry him away as if their very lives depend on it. Not a single person spares a look for me, even though I've been thrown right into the glass cabinet. The glass shatters into sharp shards, flying everywhere and slashing deep, bleeding cuts across my body, turning my clothes red. My face twists in pure agony, my body shaking uncontrollably. Watching them disappear down the hall, a painful ache completely takes over my heart. Only one single thought remains in my mind. I am definitely leaving their world for good. I will never, ever let our lives cross paths again. Swallowing the pain, I head to the hospital to treat my wounds. While holding the prescription the doctor gave me to get my medicine, I spot some very familiar faces in the next room. Serafina, Genevieve, and Aurelia are standing guard right outside Crispin's ward. Their eyes are full of poorly hidden heartache. They whisper to each other that keeping soft-hearted Crispin with the Mercer family will only cause him endless misery. Once this marriage alliance is settled, no matter what it takes, we have to find a way to rescue him from there. I honestly can't stand to see him suffer even the slightest bit of harm ever again. Our parents already know that the only one we actually care about is Crispin. We absolutely have to keep him safe. So, whoever Sterling chooses, she has to accept this marriage without making a single complaint. I silently watch all this from the shadows, my heart suddenly cramping with severe, stabbing pain. This was the real reason why, in my previous life, they still agreed to marry me despite absolutely detesting me. They actually believed they were being noble, sacrificing their own happiness just to protect their precious sweetheart. But get this, what they actually destroyed was my whole life. I put my head down, laughing hysterically until tears finally came. They don't need to worry. This time, nobody has to throw their life away. I pulled myself together, turning to leave when my phone suddenly started ringing. That loud ring completely startled the three women inside the room. Shoving the door open, they looked pretty shocked to find me standing there. "Why are you here?" they asked. "Did you come to apologize to Crispin? And how long have you been standing there? Did you overhear what we just said? Why are you covered in so many cuts and bruises anyway? How did this even happen?" Looking at their frantic faces, I answered them very calmly. "These wounds happened because you three literally slammed me into a glass cabinet just to protect your precious Crispin. I only came to this hospital to get patched up, not to beg him for forgiveness. Remember, he's the one who threw boiling coffee at me first, so I merely pushed him back. Running into you guys here was just a completely miserable stroke of bad luck." Hearing my side of the story, all three of them just stood there utterly speechless for a brief moment. Their stares grew strangely conflicted. Thinking back to when they first heard the crash and ran inside, Genevieve lost her temper and snapped first. "Crispin didn't spill that hot coffee on you on purpose," she insisted. "He's badly hurt and barely has any strength left in his grip, so stop acting so incredibly petty. When we saw blood splattered on the tiles, we panicked thinking his life was on the line, so we overreacted. We're sorry." Serafina seemed to finally calm her breathing down as well. "Honestly, we didn't mean to blame you. He just looked so pitiful, so we had to say something. We literally grew up together, and you've always been our top priority. So, have you given any more thought to our wedding arrangement?" The moment Aurelia stopped speaking, all three of them immediately turned their eyes toward me. Look at how tense they are. Watching their desperate expressions while remembering the cruel things I just overheard was pure, unfiltered irony. "I've made up my mind." As for the three of you, before I could even finish, the heart monitor began screaming in panic. Beep, beep, beep. That beeping sound made their three hearts skip a massive, terrifying beat. Whipping around, they scrambled right back inside to see what was going wrong. Doctors and nurses rushed inside in a total panic. Because of the trauma, the patient's kidneys have suffered critical damage. We missed this complication, and giving him the wrong meds triggered complete organ failure. Things look incredibly grim right now. At the doctor's words, Serafina's eyes flushed red with anger. "What on earth are you doing?" she screamed. "How could you make such a stupid mistake? Crispin is still so young, so if your lazy negligence ruins his entire future, Can any of you actually face the consequences? Genevieve violently seized the doctor's collar, her voice trembling with absolute, unchecked rage. I am giving you exactly 30 minutes to find a guaranteed cure. If anything happens to him, I swear I will make every single one of you pay the ultimate price. Aurelia lost her mind too, frantically dialing number after number to bring in outside help. Professor Zhang, you are the leading kidney specialist in the nation, and I need you to save someone incredibly precious to me right now. Tell me where you are, and I'll send my personal driver to get you this second. By now, the room had descended into absolute, chaotic madness. Total panic gripped the entire room. The hospital scrambled to assemble their top specialists, rushing to map out an emergency medical strategy. Currently, his only hope is a complete transplant, but securing a perfectly matched donor kidney will probably take weeks. Every passing minute puts his life at greater risk. Hearing that devastating reality, all three women didn't hesitate for a single fraction of a second. They literally tripped over each other running to get tested. When the rapid results arrived, it showed Serafina was a highly compatible match. Staring at the legal consent papers the doctor held out, she scribbled her signature without a moment of doubt and headed straight into surgery. Minutes felt like agonizing hours, but just when they were sweating from pure nerves, another massive crisis suddenly struck. A nurse rushed out into the hallway, looking completely terrified. The clinic's supply bank is almost completely out of his type. He urgently needs a massive transfusion this very instant. Pacing outside the door, Genevieve and Aurelia quickly rolled up their sleeves, yelling that they share his type and can donate right away. But he's severely hemorrhaging, so the volume from just 2 donors won't be nearly enough. You must call in more people immediately. If we don't locate donors soon, it will be far too late. We're plenty, they cried. Do whatever it takes, just drain every last drop from us. Knowing she couldn't convince them otherwise, the nurse could only guide both of them straight into the blood drawing room. That red warning light kept pulsing outside the theater, slowly starting to blur my vision. From his collapse to their desperate donations, I stood there watching this entire circus unfold. Honestly, guys, my mind had gone totally numb. During my previous life, when they both died trying to save him, I wasn't there to witness it. I only learned the gruesome details much later. Back then, I was totally drowning in grief, unable to understand why they would throw their lives away just to save him. But after living through this, I finally got it. They simply loved Crispin. They loved him so much they were willing to sacrifice absolutely everything for his sake. From their marriages to their own lives, they would march straight to their doom without hesitation, wave after wave. Honestly, it was completely impossible for me to ever beat Crispin. But watch this, I already chose to just walk away. I was done getting tangled in their messy 4-way love polygon. Finished. Once the operating room lights went off, the doctor stepped out, wiping sweat from his forehead. He asked if I was family, then said the surgery went perfectly. He said the patient would wake up soon, but the kidney donor had to stay in the intensive care unit for observation. Over in the blood transfusion room, the other 2 girls had also passed out from giving way too much blood. The doctor asked if I could handle taking care of all 4 of them alone. I just shook my head. I told him I have absolutely zero connection to any of those 4, but I could help call their families. They'll be here soon. After saying that, I shot text messages to the Locke, Croft, and Frost families, and Butler Bates, letting them know what happened. Right as I turned to leave, I caught a few nurses gossiping nearby in hushed voices. No relationship, one whispered. I really thought he was married to one of those 3 gorgeous women. How could he be? The other replied. If your wife risked her life for some other guy, could you ever swallow that insult? If you ask me, those 3 absolute beauties definitely have a massive thing for that patient. Why else would they fight over who got to save him? Hearing this, I just smiled a faint, empty smile, completely agreeing with them. Yeah, the guy they actually loved from start to finish was never going to be their husband again. Dragging my bruised, aching body back home, I found my parents waiting in the living room. Seeing my physical state, they immediately frowned in deep concern. Not wanting them to worry, I quickly made up a random excuse. Just brushed it off. Once they heard I would heal up fast, they finally relaxed. My mom sighed in relief and pushed a small box into my hands. This is the marriage token sent by the Vanguard family. Keep it safe. The one we mailed to Beatrix Vanguard arrived safely too. Just a bit ago, your Uncle Locke, Aunt Croft, and Grandpa Frost called about the marriage alliance, and they brought up Crispin, too. They claimed those 3 girls were just showing a bit too much charity, and that deep down, they only fancy you. We didn't know what really happened, so we kept out of it. You handle it yourself. You are a grown adult now, with your own clear ideas and limits. Your dad and I won't meddle. Not wanting them to stress, I promised I'd take care of this mess completely. Over the next 2 days, Chorus ordered some people to dig up details on the Vanguard family and Beatrix Vanguard for background research. Once I got a solid idea of who they were, I hit the mall to buy formal gifts tailored to their tastes. After a long, exhausting day of shopping, I drove back with my car trunk completely packed with gifts. But guess who was waiting right at my doorstep when I got back? Yep, Serafina, Genevieve, and Aurelia. They'd brought a massive mountain of expensive gifts, easily enough to bury my entire living room. Seeing my confusion, they looked at each other, explaining their families had prepared these. They forced us to come here directly to apologize to you. You saw how bad it was. Crispin was literally hanging by a thread, and he got even worse because of you. We just lost control of our emotions and ended up hurting you. Sterling, if you are angry, blame us. Just do not tell our families, and do not make Crispin take the fall. No matter what you say, he is a victim here too. Listening to their excuses, I finally realized their families forced them to apologize, and they were just using this moment to shield Crispin. Honestly, I was in absolutely no mood to play verbal ping pong with them right now. Keeping it polite, I just told them to take their gifts back. I do not need this stuff, and I will not waste time bothering Crispin over something so boring. I am exhausted and need rest. Talking to them, I rubbed my tired eyes while pulling my phone out of my pocket. Suddenly, the box holding the Vanguard family tokens slipped out, landing right at Serafina's feet. She bent down, picked it up, and asked what it was. Genevieve and Aurelia leaned in closer. The second they recognized that box, their faces turned pale like a broken traffic light. An engagement token? They gasped, asking if I already decided who I was marrying. Seeing them about to pry the box open, I snatched it right back out of her hands with lightning speed. Seeing my intense reaction, the three women froze instantly, their eyes locking onto me like heat-seeking missiles as they demanded to know who I picked. Was it Genevieve or Aurelia? Or maybe the last one, meaning herself? Serafina could not even bring herself to finish that terrifying sentence. She was absolutely terrified. I actually chose her. I just forced a casual smile, meeting their tense gazes. What if I have made a decision? You guys do not need to stress, because it has absolutely nothing to do with you. Genevieve fiercely grabbed my hand, her voice frantic as she asked what I meant by that. Your wife can only be one of us three, because between the Croft, Locke, and Frost families, there is literally nobody else of age. Aurelia crowded in next, staring at me without blinking, saying they knew I could not decide before and they never pressured me. But now that there is a result, she wanted the truth to end this painful torture for them too. I asked if marrying someone they did not like felt like torture, even before it was official, then took a deep breath. Opening the box, I slowly pulled out the incredibly dazzling diamond watch gifted by the Vanguard family. Flashing it right in their faces, I asked if they were satisfied. They saw my trunk full of shopping bags and assumed it was just a random watch I bought today. Pointing to all those shopping bags, they immediately offered to pay for it as an apology. Calling it their apology gift, they babbled on while I just stared at the diamonds, saying absolutely nothing. Serafina assumed I loved the piece and eagerly tried putting it on my wrist, while Genevieve nodded with an approving thumbs up. Aurelia pulled out her phone and snapped a few quick pictures to keep as a souvenir. Reborn or not, this was my first time seeing real smiles on their faces. They were thrilled because they falsely believed I still had not chosen a partner, secretly celebrating their escape. Seriously, check this out. Before I could even say a word, Crispin suddenly walked in and completely shattered the silence. He stared wide-eyed at the massive mountain of gifts piling up. His eyes lit up like bright high beams as he asked why there were suddenly so many gifts for the young master. The instant the three girls saw Crispin, their eyes glued onto him like superglue, completely ignoring me. Seeing them smile so uncontrollably, I flatly told them that the gifts were mine, but I did not want them. I told him to just take everything if he wanted, then walk straight to my bedroom, ignoring them completely. Crispin acted incredibly shocked, pointing a finger at his own chest. He asked if I was joking, wondering how someone like him could ever deserve gifts meant for me. Hearing his fake, sad little tone, the hearts of those three women immediately broke for him. Pushing him toward the pile, they insisted that since Sterling gave them away, they belonged to him now. They told him these brand new clothes and gaming consoles would make him look incredibly handsome and cool. Reassuring him he was worthy, they begged Crispin not to sell himself short since things need to be used. He deserved the absolute best, so they eagerly offered to help him unwrap everything and pick the best outfits. Their voices babying Crispin slowly faded away, and once my bedroom door clicked shut, absolute silence returned. The cold, heavy metal of the watch on my wrist felt foreign, but I knew I would eventually get used to it. Waking up from a quick nap, I felt dizzy and burning with a fever. Somehow, the three girls caught wind of my sickness and rushed over in record time. For 3 whole days, they visited constantly, basically moving into our Mercer family estate to stay close. But get this, they barely spent any actual time with me, choosing to hang downstairs with Crispin instead. They kept him company, pruning branches and watering plants in our garden. My eyes watched everything silently from the sidelines, refusing to step in and ruin their happy little bubble. Occasionally, they dragged themselves upstairs to check on me, only to notice that several of my things were missing. They asked about my missing pearl phone charm, wondering where the precious gemstone bracelet I used to love had gone. Since I always kept those things in plain sight, they wanted to know why they were missing now. They even demanded to know where I hid our group photo from when we were 18, but I just made up some quick excuses. Though they seemed highly suspicious, they did not press me further. By the time my big birthday banquet arrived, my fever was completely gone, and my parents came by to give me a major heads up. Tonight, every single major VIP in our circle is showing up. The Locke, Croft, and Frost families are definitely coming to celebrate your birthday. Your dad and I talked, and we think tonight is the absolute best time to announce your wedding. What do you say? I was right about to nod when glass shattered behind me. I turned around and saw Crispin standing there, completely frozen, white as a sheet. He asked if I was getting married. I just gave a tiny nod without explaining. Besides, pretty soon literally everyone would know about this marriage. Then, 7 p.m. rolled around, and the birthday banquet kicked off right on schedule. That is when Serafina, Genevieve, and Aurelia walked in together. Looking amazing in evening gowns, they stole the whole room's attention. Some guy muttered how jealous he was of me. Having 3 childhood sweethearts that stunning and getting to pick one for marriage? When would anyone get luck that crazy? Why even be jealous? It is just a childhood arranged marriage after all. Their social status matches perfectly, but is Sterling Mercer finally of age today? Everyone is dying to know who he picks. Seriously, would you want to be in his shoes right now? I quietly listened to their gossip with a completely calm face, but the 3 girls were already panicking. They power walked over and demanded to know why I didn't give them a heads up about the announcement. I calmly told them my business has absolutely nothing to do with them. Why should I? I shrugged. Totally zen. That only made them more irritated. They snapped back, asking how this could possibly have nothing to do with them. They told me to stop throwing tantrums and just tell them who I picked. But right then, my parents stepped onto the center of the stage. They smiled at the crowd and picked up the microphone. Thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedules to celebrate my son's birthday tonight. On behalf of the Mercer family, we thank you. But along with his birthday, we also have another happy announcement to make. It is regarding the official marriage alliance for my son, Sterling Mercer. Hearing this teaser, the entire banquet hall exploded into a massive cheering frenzy. The elders from the Frost, Croft, and Locke families looked the most excited. They stood right up, eagerly calling Aurelia, Genevieve, and Serafina over to join them. Seeing this unfold, the hearts of those 3 girls started pounding in pure panic. Their faces were absolutely miserable, but they knew they had to keep up appearances and maintain high society etiquette. So they wore fake smiles and reluctantly went back. My parents shot me a quick look. I knew exactly what to do, and stepped up beside them. Just then, loud static screeched behind us. I turned with the crowd, and trust me, nobody expected the face that suddenly popped up on the giant screen. It was Crispin, crying hysterically like he was starring in some tragic movie. He cried directly to Serafina, Genevieve, and Aurelia, apologizing for being just a poor butler's son who lacked my looks and background. He said he had accepted his fate early on and stopped dreaming of anything valuable. But everything changed when they entered his life, giving him a tiny spark of hope. He cried about how they abandoned Sterling at a campsite, driving all night just to comfort him over a nightmare. He remembered every single birthday. They used business trips as excuses to take him to the Arctic just to see the aurora, even donating blood and a kidney until they literally passed out to save him. He warned them that by the time they watch this, he will be on the Mercer Group rooftop. He knows one of them has to marry Sterling Mercer, but just thinking about it breaks his heart. Knowing they will have to cut him off forever after the wedding makes his soul feel completely shattered. He knows they are forced. He claims they are being forced into this marriage by their families, and if they weren't so terrified of his safety, they would never agree to marry Sterling Mercer. He refused to let them sacrifice their lifelong happiness just to protect him. So, he decided to end his life today so they could finally be free from their chains. He told them to go freely and chase their true love. The moment this grueling 5-minute video abruptly cut to black, the entire banquet hall fell into a graveyard silence. Everyone's eyes were wide with total, unadulterated shock, staring directly at Serafina, Genevieve, and Aurelia. Well, everyone, except me. When the video first started playing, my mind blanked for just a second, but remembering Crispin's state before I left home, I wasn't even slightly surprised. I looked down at the 3 girls, who looked completely frozen, like they'd just been struck by lightning, while the furious elders beside them looked ready to pass out. I let out a soft, almost silent sigh. With a massive scandal like this, the people hurting most were likely the elders who watched me grow up. After all, my parents already knew I was marrying someone else, not these high society misses who ruined my past lives. Beyond the initial shock, they probably just felt incredibly relieved. But as for these other elders, who were kept completely in the dark and kept pushing for our families to unite, Now that they knew what those three actually did for Crispin, they probably wouldn't dare suggest a marriage alliance ever again. And right on cue, watch this. The moment those elders snapped back, they immediately ordered bodyguards to grab Serafina, Genevieve, and Aurelia, who were desperately trying to run off to find Crispin. Losing this much face in public had them slamming tables in pure, furious rage. Today is Sterling's birthday. Instead of staying here to celebrate with him, you want to run off to find that butler's son? Let me tell you right now, as long as we are still breathing, don't you dare think about seeing him ever again. But hearing that Crispin might end his life, the sanity of those three women completely evaporated into thin air. Their minds and hearts were completely consumed by his safety, wishing they could grow wings and fly straight to his side. So, whether it was the endless waves of mockery, the burning rage of their elders, or the wall of bodyguards trapping them, they didn't care about any of it. Is a birthday party really more important than his life? If you block us today and something happens to Crispin, we will never marry Sterling Mercer for as long as we live. Right after dropping that massive threat, they grabbed nearby wine bottles and shattered them right in front of the guards. Instantly, the entire banquet hall descended into pure, screaming chaos. Watching them break through the security and run off without even looking back, a cold, self-mocking smile crept onto my face on stage. Even in this second life, they still threw everything away for him. I could feel my heart pounding so fast it felt ready to burst. Other than a heavy, bitter ache deep inside, I couldn't even feel the pain anymore. Meanwhile, the guests below, seeing the prospective brides flee, turned their burning stares directly at me. Think about the second-hand embarrassment here. The guy they actually love is the butler's kid? Sterling is totally humiliated. The poor guy. It is supposed to be his birthday and his brides just ran away while the party got smashed to pieces. Do you think he is going to lose his mind? Despite the wild whispers, I kept a completely calm, unfazed expression. I gave a reassuring pat to my stunned parents, then reached back for the microphone. I spoke with absolute, perfect composure, apologizing to everyone for the sudden, startling accident that just happened. On behalf of my family, I am incredibly sorry. I also want to announce that my wedding will go on as planned the day after tomorrow. My bride will be Beatrix Vanguard from the Vanguard family of the North, and everyone is warmly invited to join the ceremony. Those calm, quiet words plunged the entire room right back into a stunned silence. I didn't care about their reactions at all. I guided my parents out of the hotel. During the entire car ride, the silence was so thick you could hear every breath. Right as we pulled up, my parents let out heavy sighs and looked at me with deep pity. Sterling, did you already know about Crispin? Is that why you broke things off with them and chose to marry that illegitimate daughter of the Vanguards? Forced love never ends well. Even if I don't love Beatrix Vanguard passionately, she is entirely devoted to her career. She will never betray me. We might not have a wildly passionate romance, but we will always treat each other with mutual respect. For me, that is more than enough. Hearing my calm certainty, my parents looked quite shocked, asking if I really trusted Beatrix Vanguard that much. I just nodded softly. I had thoroughly investigated her, but I kept that reason to myself. In my past life, Beatrix Vanguard stayed single forever, completely avoiding even a single rumor or scandal. She was known as the ultimate ice queen of the corporate world until her very last breath. That is why I knew this risky move of mine would not fail. Once that pathetic excuse of a birthday party finally wrapped up, I headed straight back home and started throwing my things into suitcases. My wedding was set up north. Just one day before the big event, the Vanguard family sent over a fleet of private jets packed with my dowry. I was literally walking out to the airport when a text lit up my phone. It was an address from Serafina, demanding that I drop everything and show up right away to talk. I checked the clock. Since I still had about 5 hours before my flight left, I decided to go. The moment I pushed open the door, 3 dark, angry glares instantly pinned me down. Complete silence. So, I kept my mouth shut too. Let them make the first move. 10 slow minutes passed before Serafina sipped her wine and spoke in a dark, heavy voice. Sterling, she said, we know we ruined your birthday party yesterday and treated you badly, but it was a matter of life and death. We could not just stand by and watch Crispin destroy himself. We had absolutely no choice but to sacrifice your feelings. I just stared back, completely numb. I did not want their hollow apologies. Honestly, who could blame him for being this cold? My cold response clearly made them uneasy. Suddenly, Genevieve and Aurelia sounded a whole lot more desperate. They snapped that the damage was already done and my anger would not fix it. Apparently, the elders of all their families were completely furious. Crispin is totally innocent and should not be punished. Besides, you have always been the elders' golden child since we were kids. If you just go smooth things over with them, they will calm down. All you have to do is sweet-talk the family leaders to protect Crispin. Should you agree, then whichever of us you choose to marry will love you properly for the rest of our lives. Deal? Unbelievable. Once again, they only reached out to me to shield their precious Crispin. I felt completely drained. No way. After they ran out on me yesterday, I had already publicly declared, but before I could finish, Serafina snapped. Declared what? Who did you choose? I looked at their anxious faces, decided not to be too harsh, and kept my answer simple. Those engagement rings their families sent over were already handed to a courier. They would arrive at their doorsteps by tomorrow. Hearing those words, the three of them immediately assumed I returned 2 rings and kept one for my choice. They tried to push me to see who the winner was, but watch how their entire world suddenly stops. The nurse panicked. Miss Locke, Miss Croft, Miss Frost, please come quickly. Mr. Bates woke up and is trying to jump off the roof again. Their faces went pale, white as a sheet. They grabbed their coats, ready to sprint. Watching them rush away for what would be the absolute last time, I called out. Before we go our separate ways, can you 3 just wish me a happy wedding? For some strange reason, my request sent a wave of sudden panic straight through their hearts. Serafina, Genevieve, and Aurelia opened their mouths, wanting to ask why on earth I would say that, but the words died in their throats. They looked at each other and, like mindless robots, flatly said, "Happy wedding." The exact second those words left their lips, the phone rang again. They did not waste another moment, rushing straight out. I did not bother trying to stop them. As I watched their cars speed off into the distance, I went back, blocked their numbers, and erased their contact info forever. Grabbing my bags, I boarded the helicopter sent by the Vanguard family. In this lifetime, I chose absolutely zero. Instead, I chose to run headfirst into a brand new life. Meanwhile, the 3 girls arrived at the hospital in a complete panic. Crispin had already been dragged back from the edge. He lay there in bed, crying as he looked at them, silently blaming them for not being there sooner. "What took you so long?" he sobbed. Just hearing his voice made their hearts completely break. They crowded around his bed, begging him to stop crying and promising they were here now. Serafina gently wiped away his tears, her eyes absolutely filled with pure devotion and pity. She reminded him that his body was still weak and he needed to rest. "We are staying right here with you," she said. Seeing how attentive Serafina was, Genevieve panicked about falling behind and quickly promised they would all protect him. Aurelia nodded, determined not to be outdone. But then Crispin whined about them still having to marry Sterling. He whimpered that the thought of it stabbed his heart like a knife. He just could not let them sacrifice their happiness and marry some guy they did not love just for him. A lifetime is just too long to suffer through that. After his dramatic little speech, Crispin hung his head in fake sadness, but the second their backs were turned, a cold, victorious smirk spread across his face. The moment he looks up again, he is right back to acting like a helpless victim. Seeing him pretend to sacrifice absolutely everything for them, the 3 girls felt their hearts completely melt. Any doubts they had from earlier that day instantly vanish. They tell him, "Crispin, you know you are the only one we love, so why say that? Even if one of us ends up marrying Sterling Mercer, you will always hold the most important spot in our hearts, so do not worry at all. You are always going to be our number 1. Hearing these 3 wealthy women beg for his approval, Crispin practically explodes with smug satisfaction. He sneers to himself, so what if Sterling Mercer is the young master of this family? I can still take everything he owns right from under him. Meanwhile, back at my place, I watch the 3 of them walk away before heading straight to the airport. I end up getting there way earlier than I originally planned. Remembering something, I call home and tell my dad to fire Butler Bates immediately. Having Crispin stay at our place is a bad idea, and my dad agrees, saying he and my mom will take care of it soon. Once I hang up, my flight is ready. I turn off my phone and just drift off to sleep. Honestly, my parents were already planning to kick the butler out anyway. Years ago, they felt bad for a single father and let him raise his son inside our mansion. And how did they get repaid? By having our entire family humiliated in front of everyone. So they contact Human Resources and send the butler his official termination papers. But the moment he gets the letter, Butler Bates storms right into my dad's private study without even knocking. He demands to know what he did wrong, but my dad simply tells him he is no longer fit for the job. Staring at this disrespectful butler, my dad feels like the guy is just a bad luck magnet. It seems we were far too nice to the staff, and now they have completely forgotten their place. The butler actually says that if those rich girls love his prince of a son, it just means I lack charm. Can you believe this guy's nerve? Hearing this delusion, my dad deeply regrets ever being kind to them. He instantly calls security to drag the butler out, while the maids pack their bags and throw them out the door. Getting thrown out makes the butler incredibly bitter, complaining that his son is being punished just for being unbelievably charming. In his head, our family is just behaving like giant bullies. He calls Crispin at the hospital, demanding his son find him an easy, high-paying job. When Crispin hears they got kicked to the curb, he is absolutely furious at my dad. He fumes over how they lived there for years, wondering how we could just throw them out without cause. Right away, Crispin starts crying and whining to his 3 rich girls. He calls Serafina, Genevieve, and Aurelia, crying about how we threw them out because of the drama at the birthday party. He acts confused, saying he knows I am mad at him, but his father did absolutely nothing wrong. Furious, the three girls immediately try calling me, planning to demand that I hire his dad back. They call over and over, but only get my voicemail saying the phone is turned off, making their expressions turn incredibly sour. Now watch how they baby him. Serafina tells him not to worry because she has an empty villa. She offers it to them, but the other girls quickly chime in with their own luxury properties. Seeing them fight over who gets to house him leaves Crispin totally speechless. Thank God for them. Once the father and son are taken care of, the girls head home. But early the very next morning, they are about to visit Crispin at the hospital when they each receive the family tokens I mailed. Serafina stares at the imperial green jade bangle inside her package. I did not choose her. Why not her? Did I not love her? Back when we were kids, I used to follow her around, sweetly calling her sister Sarah, and promising to marry her. So, did I choose Genevieve or Aurelia instead? The exact same dramatic scenario is happening at the other two houses. Genevieve and Aurelia look at their return tokens, deeply shaken and wondering how they lost to Serafina. All three of them suddenly have the same idea and rush to see each other, but they completely miss one another. Eventually, they message their group chat and agree to meet up at their usual VIP restaurant spot. Genevieve arrives to find Serafina already waiting inside. Seeing the return token in each other's hands, they both assume I must have picked Aurelia. The silence is absolutely deafening. The moment Aurelia walks in, her friends glare at her like laser beams, leaving her completely and utterly confused. Without hesitation, she whipped out her token and shoved it right in their faces. This is my family's ancestral jade pendant. Sterling sent it back, she said. So which one of you did he choose? Staring at the jade in her hand, the other two panicked and scrambled to pull out their own tokens. Sterling sent mine back, too. Mine as well, the third whispered. A heavy, suffocating silence fell over them. Aurelia finally broke it. If it's not us, then who? Besides our own families, who in the entire country is actually qualified to marry Sterling Mercer? Maybe, just maybe, Sterling is throwing a tantrum and waiting for us to come coax him back. Genevieve voiced her theory, desperately trying to convince herself as much as the others. Yes, that has to be it, absolutely. All three immediately clung to that hope, turning the entire room into a chaotic, desperate mess of coping mechanisms. Suddenly, a ringing phone shattered their little delusion session. Serafina saw Crispin's name on the screen and felt zero desire to answer. She just let it ring and ring, until it finally cut off. Then the other two phones started buzzing right after. They both chose to ignore him, too, until Serafina's phone began blaring for a second time. Just pick it up, Genevieve and Aurelia urged in unison. What if it's an actual emergency? Serafina finally answered, sliding it onto speaker. Hey, Crispin, what is going on? He asked if Jen and Aura were with her, and she confirmed they were all listening on speaker. The moment she spoke, Crispin's overly excited, high-pitched voice came blasting through the speaker. He shouted, Sarah, Jen, Aura, I am so deeply touched that you actually rejected Sterling and fought your families for me. The three girls exchanged incredibly confused looks. Sure, they had been hesitant about the wedding, but they had never actually rejected the alliance. Sensing something was seriously wrong, they abruptly cut off his victory lap. Crispin, what exactly are you talking about? He paused in confusion for a second, then kept going. Wait, he said, didn't you reject him? Because Sterling Mercer just went and married that illegitimate Vanguard girl from the north. What? Hearing those words, all three of their faces twisted into absolute, pure horror. Sterling Mercer married into the Northern Vanguard family? When on earth did this happen, and how did they not know? As heirs to the country's elite dynasties, they obviously knew all about the Vanguard clan. They knew Beatrix Vanguard was incredibly talented, but she was an illegitimate child. And in their high society circles, legitimate heirs absolutely despised that. How could a low-born illegitimate daughter like Beatrix ever be worthy of someone like Sterling Mercer? Did Sterling throw his life in the trash just to spite them? Let's watch as they frantically pull out their phones to check. Dozens of viral marketing articles started flooding across their glowing screens. The headlines screamed that the illegitimate Vanguard daughter had ascended, locking down the Southern Mercer heir and securing her position. Why would the ultimate wealthy heir choose a basic illegitimate child? Even if they utterly refused to believe it, they couldn't deny the cold, hard reality that I was marrying someone else. Crispin kept calling out, Sarah, Jen, Aura, are you still there? Hearing nothing but dead silence on the other end, Crispin kept calling their names. But all three girls were so profoundly traumatized by this absolute bombshell of a news drop that they completely forgot Crispin even existed. Serafina instantly hung up on him and dialed her assistant. Book me the absolute fastest flight heading north. Stu, we are all going together to drag Sterling back. He cannot just marry some random nobody to spite us. Genevieve was in complete agreement, but when her assistant called back to report that every single commercial flight heading north was booked solid, She immediately used her family's massive influence to secure a private jet flight path straight to the north. You can feel the heavy dread as they finally sat there in speechless misery. Crispin tried calling them again, but the girls were obviously in no mood to deal with him. In a moment of perfect synchronization, all three of them shut down their devices. Back at the hospital, Crispin glared at his disconnected screen. His highly energetic mood instantly crashed and burned. The second that automated voicemail operator kicked in, telling him the number was unavailable, he flew into such a blind rage that he slammed his phone into the solid floor. "Sterling Mercer," he shrieked, spitting my name with pure venom. Glaring down at his shattered device, his eyes burned with sheer malice. He barked at a nearby nurse to buy him a replacement, then discharged himself from the hospital to hunt those three down. Meanwhile, getting clearance for that private jet took precious time. They bombarded my phone with endless, panicked texts. "Sterling, do not marry some illegitimate girl just to hurt us. Please come back." They begged me to stop being stubborn and pretend none of this ever happened. Up north, staring at an avalanche of texts, I knew they'd received the returned family heirlooms. My mom looked at me and said, "Sterling, go fetch your bride." Hearing that, I nodded. And I would build a happy family. Still, I couldn't actually guarantee my parents that I'd definitely be happy, so I could only promise them that, after leaving those three women behind, I wouldn't repeat the disasters of my past life. My parents understood the unspoken message, but in their position, they couldn't always act purely on their own desires. All they could do was hope their son would find the same happiness they had. "Mom and Dad will always have your back, Sterling." Looking at my worried parents, the corners of my mouth lifted into a bright smile. I blocked all three of their numbers, slid my phone into my pocket, quickly got ready, and set off with the wedding procession. Hearing that busy tone, those three women finally realized what had happened. They were blocked. They could only desperately badger the aviation authorities to speed up their flight clearance. Beatrix Vanguard walked toward me, trying to act completely cool and collected. But watch what happens next. I looked up and got completely jump-scared by the pure, deep love in her eyes. Wasn't this a business deal? Why did she look like she just won the lottery of a lifetime? I was certain I had no memory of ever interacting with that gorgeous face. I was starting to doubt my own brain. Did I secretly date someone while sleepwalking? As I carried Beatrix to the wedding car, she looked like a triumphant general. Although she still wore her signature cold CEO face, anyone with working eyes could easily tell she was over the moon. My parents were also a bit puzzled. Beatrix Vanguard was acting completely different from what they imagined. Maybe their son's choice really was right. In the wedding car, Beatrix didn't know what to say, and neither did I. So, for a moment, the atmosphere was stiffer than a board. We both opened our mouths to speak at the exact same time. Seeing her nervous deer-in-headlights look, I suddenly relaxed. I smiled warmly and said, "You first." Beatrix looked at her handsome groom and felt a wave of anxiety. She asked, "Are you hungry? I brought some snacks for you. You're going to be exhausted today." I instinctively gave a polite reply, "Thank you." Hearing me thank her so formally, Beatrix looked visibly bummed. "You don't have to be so polite with me," she murmured. I was now genuinely fascinated by my new wife. She was completely different from the terrifying rumors in the outside world. I could feel that Beatrix Vanguard had absolutely zero resistance or disgust toward this arranged marriage. At the hotel, the priest was reciting the vows. "Groom, do you promise to keep these vows, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, in beauty or fading looks, in good times or bad, to love and comfort her, to respect her, protect her, and stay eternally faithful to her as long as you both shall live?" I looked straight into Beatrix's eyes and answered with rock-solid conviction, "I do." The intense passion burning in her eyes was almost too much to handle. She liked me. I was completely sure of that, even if I had no clue where this affection came from. I zoned out for a moment. The priest looked at my spaced-out bride and asked again, "Bride, do you?" Beatrix was holding my hand so tightly out of sheer nerves that she was cutting off my blood flow. Feeling her panic, I soothingly wrapped my fingers around hers. She whispered, "I do." The priest said, "Kiss your bride." I gently, with the utmost respect, pressed a kiss onto Beatrix's forehead. Even though she handled 99% of the planning, I was still completely drained. After washing up and lying down on the bridal bed, I actually started getting anxious about the wedding night ahead. When Beatrix emerged from the bathroom, her eyes were practically shooting lasers as she stared at me resting on the giant red bed. She clearly had a million questions she wanted to ask me right now. But right now was definitely not the time for an interview. I stammered, "Turn off the lights." She left one dim light on and leaned down to kiss her groom. And honestly, let's just say my new CEO wife was incredibly proactive tonight. Sometime later, Beatrix's soft whimpering echoed through the quiet room. "No more," I murmured, trying to soothe her. "Be good," she begged just one last time. It wasn't until dawn broke that the earthquake on our giant bed finally stopped. I carried Beatrix to quickly clean up, and then we both collapsed into a heavy sleep. Meanwhile, the three women rushed from their private jet straight to the wedding venue, finding nothing but an empty hall. Knowing they were too late, they immediately sped toward the Vanguard family's private estate. Arriving outside the gates, the three were completely blocked by security, with an airtight defense system making it impossible to crash the wedding. Left with no choices, they wait inside their car in agonizing silence. Every passing second feels like chewing on broken glass, making this the slowest, most torturous wait of their entire lives. Only when the sun is high in the sky do people finally start coming out, and it is just staff heading out for groceries. Seeing the maids buy supplies, they trade quick glances and tail them. As the van rounds a corner, they block the road and forcefully bully the poor kitchen staff into smuggling them inside. Following a pretty tense negotiation, the terrified staff finally lets them in. They step onto the Vanguard estate and sprint straight for the main house, but the kitchen staff immediately radio security the second they get free. Loud security alarms start blaring all over the place like air raid sirens, instantly jolting me awake from the noise. What is going on? I ask, and Beatrice tells me to sleep while she handles the intruders. Once Beatrice leaves, I cannot fall back asleep anyway, so I get up to wash my face. Walking downstairs, I find three pretty unwelcome guests pinned flat on the living room floor. Why are you guys here? Serafina, Genevieve, and Aurelia spot me on the stairs and stop arguing with Beatrice. Their eyes immediately lock onto the fresh scratch marks on my neck. Look at their faces, their hearts are getting absolutely crushed right now. They whip their heads to glare at Beatrice, looking like they want to rip the flesh right off her. Beatrice completely ignores their murderous stares and walks right over to my side. I gesture to her, asking why these three are currently decorating our living room carpet. She explains they hijacked our kitchen staff to sneak in, so they got pinned. I tell her to release them since they are technically my older sisters. Hearing her husband call them sisters, Beatrice tells the guards to release them. When I call them sisters, the three of them forget their embarrassment as their hearts break even further. Once freed, they lunge at me, only to get blocked by a wall of guards. Facing these absolute units, they can only stand there and yell out that I cannot just throw a tantrum and casually marry someone. Come back with us, they plead, promising to overlook everything if I return. They claim they can pretend nothing happened, which makes Beatrice's blood absolutely boil. She is ready to absolutely destroy them, but I raise my hand to stop her, giving my new wife a reassuring look before turning to face the three clowns. Serafina, Genevieve, Aurelia, stop acting like you are the center of the universe. Do you seriously think I got married just to spite you? Because that is laughably arrogant of you. And as for whether you mind, do you actually think your opinion matters to me at all? Who do you think you are to talk to me like that? I was clearly too nice to you before, feeding your delusional superiority complex. Are you even worthy of being in my life? After dropping that massive bomb, I walk away to eat breakfast with Beatrice. Watch her reaction here, she is literally glowing while he shreds their pride. Beatrice waves her hand, ordering the guards to throw them out because she cannot have trash ruining her husband's appetite. My voice fades into the distance. While eating and watching the stormy sky, I hear the butler report that the three women are still standing outside the gates, refusing to leave. I tell Beatrice to ignore them. She does not need to report these things. You already know my history with them, but now that we are married, I have completely and totally let go of the past. Caught red-handed, Beatrice is not embarrassed in the slightest. I ask her why she acted like she already knew me for years, which makes her playful smile awkwardly freeze up. How can she possibly admit to finding his high school student ID card, falling in love with his photo at first sight, before getting totally hooked after seeing him save someone from school bullies? Beatrice decides to confess she went to my school, though I have no memory of her. She explains she had not been brought back to the Vanguard family yet and left immediately after, which makes perfect sense to me. A sudden boom of thunder startles us as a heavy downpour begins outside. We ignore the storm and keep talking, both of us eager to understand each other better, while the three girls outside seem totally forgotten by the world. They stubbornly stand in the freezing rain, letting the harsh storm batter them. The rain is heavy, but it cannot wash away their crushing regret, as they wonder if they actually liked Crispin at all. Why does Sterling's marriage hurt this much? Aurelia's sudden question leaves them utterly speechless. Staring at their silence, she softly mumbles to herself, wondering if Sterling will really never forgive them, since he was always the softest with them. He knows we are standing out here in the freezing storm. He will definitely come out because he always cared the absolute most. Just look at them, standing in the freezing storm and drowning in their own ridiculous delusions. Suddenly, Serafina's exhausted body totally gives out, and she crashes to the ground. The other two scramble to help, but their own strength vanishes, and they collapse right beside her. When Crispin finally pulls up to the Vanguard gates, this absolute train wreck is the exact scene waiting for him. Seeing all three lying face down in the mud, he panics, calls an ambulance, and rushes them to the nearest hospital. The doctor explains they recently donated a kidney and still haven't fully recovered. Getting caught in that freezing rain triggered a massive fever, especially since these two already lost so much blood and never recuperated. At the clinic, Crispin looks utterly drained and exhausted, trying to nurse all three of them back to health by himself. He keeps wiping their sweaty foreheads, while obsessively monitoring their hanging IV drips. Aurelia and Genevieve wake up first, and seeing the hospital room, they both delusionally assume I was the one who brought them there. Glancing at the still unconscious Serafina, and feeling how weak their own bodies are, they suddenly don't feel so miserable anymore. Hearing footsteps approaching, they both stare eagerly at the doorway, fully expecting it to be me. But instead, Crispin walks right in. In an instant, their hopeful faces drop with absolute crushing disappointment. Jen, Aura, you're awake. Crispin looks completely overjoyed, totally missing their cold reaction. Saying he was worried to death, he walks over and reaches out to check Genevieve's forehead. But she flinches away, dodging his touch. Crispin's eyes instantly well with tears as she mutters, "I'm fine, go check Aura." Genevieve honestly doesn't know why his touch suddenly repulses her so much. Aurelia chimes in, "I'm fine too, go look after Serafina." Seeing Crispin look at her with those pathetic, teary puppy dog eyes, Aurelia suddenly has absolutely zero desire to comfort him. "You guys are too much," Crispin groans, turning his head away. He fully expects them to panic and baby him just like before. He waits. Nothing but silence. Sensing something is horribly wrong, he spins around only to find them both staring blankly at the ceiling, completely lost in their own heads. Neither girl cares a single bit about his hurt feelings, but just as he opens his mouth, Serafina finally stirs awake. "Serafina, you're finally awake." Crispin immediately starts whining, blasting her with his annoying complaints the second she opens her eyes. It gives her an instant, splitting headache, and she snaps at him to shut up. Crispin freezes like a deer in headlights. What is going on? Why are they all treating him like this? Looking at his tears, Serafina feels nothing but pure irritation. Her old sympathy for him is completely dead and gone. Standing outside my gates, they finally had to face the cold truth: they've been in love with me all along. That's the real reason their bodies physically collapsed at the thought of me marrying someone else. Their affection for Crispin was just cheap pity built on his pathetic, fragile act. If they ever want me back, they need to pack him up and kick him out. Watching the three of them get lost in deep, silent thought, Crispin starts to feel a wave of pure panic. And that panic grows fast. Terrified, he defaults to his classic move, playing the weak victim to squeeze out some pity, crying that they are going way too far. He whines about dragging his own sick body there to nurse them with all his heart, only to get treated like trash the second they wake up. Staring at the sniveling, weeping guy, the girls can't help but think how different Sterling would be. Sterling would never act like this or throw a massive tantrum over every little favor just to get credit for it. He would only care for them quietly, but since Crispin did technically look after them, they finally break their silence. They tell him he worked hard, offering to wire him cash to buy something nice, and promise to find him an easy, relaxed job. Ordering him to pack up, they promise an apartment so he and his dad can move out of the villa. Hearing this, Crispin is so completely shell-shocked that he literally forgets to cry, standing frozen to the spot. He asks if they are cutting ties with him, but Serafina responds with a deadpan stare. "Sterling is still mad at us, so you need to leave." "Sterling is already married," he cries. "So why is this even happening to them?" They demand who said they were forced, and when he claims they don't even love him, they snap, "Shut up, you don't dictate who we love." With that, all three of them glare at him with absolute, Siberian-level coldness. Ever since Crispin first got their attention, he had never seen them look at him with such cold disdain. It dragged him right back to his first day at the Mercer estate. They had glared at him with those exact same icy, disgusted expressions. All those years of hard work driving a wedge between me and them, forcing them to treat him well. Was it all resetting to zero? He could never accept this. Sterling Mercer is already married. "You ruined his birthday party for me and refused his proposal. That literally just happened a few days ago. Did you all get amnesia?" Crispin screamed. On the verge of a total breakdown, Sterling Mercer does not give a single crap about you. If he actually cared, he wouldn't have left you in the pouring rain until you passed out without even glancing at you once. "Shut up," they all roared simultaneously. Hearing that brutal truth out loud made all three of them explode with sheer rage. Staring at the hysterical Crispin, every single ounce of sympathy they had left for him completely dissolved. "Did Sterling Mercer say something to you guys? He is already married, and still trying to drive us apart," he screamed, loudly cursing me, and completely throwing away his usual fake submissive persona. This was likely his true face. "If you keep talking like that, I guarantee you are going to regret it." Serafina glared at him with murder in her eyes. Crispin instantly snapped back to reality. After all, these were heirs of the four great wealthy families. They had spoiled him and played nice before, but that did not mean they were actually decent human beings. He knew exactly how ruthlessly and sadistically they destroyed anyone who dared to cross them. Crispin froze, cold sweat soaking his shirt. He quickly tried to act dumb, claiming they had just woken up and were not thinking straight. Saying he would go call the doctor, Crispin practically bolted out of the hospital room to escape the tension. The second he stepped out into the hallway, his face twisted into an ugly, demonic grimace, his eyes filled with pure shadows. He muttered, wishing Sterling Mercer would just die and go to hell, terrifying nearby nurses with his completely unhinged expression. But he quickly masked his rage, forcing a calm expression to go buy them food. If he wanted to keep living in luxury, he had to cling to these rich girls like a parasite. After tasting high society, how could he ever willingly go back to being an absolute nobody, when he was so close to having it all? Ever since I found out Beatrix actually had a secret crush on me, I started putting real effort into loving her back. As newlyweds, we were glued to each other 24/7, and our romance skyrocketed. But there was one tiny detail I could not handle. Despite being married 3 times before, my past wives treated me like total air. I had zero experience with real physical intimacy, but Beatrix practically hunted me down every single night until the early morning hours. One night, Beatrix was lounging seductively on our bed, wearing a highly transparent mesh nightgown with one shoulder slipping down. She whispered, calling me hubby and asking me to look at her special nightgown. Hearing her cute, whining voice, my heart instantly melted. I told her she did not need to try so hard to please me, but Beatrix just shook her head, whispering that she was not trying to please me, she was just physically addicted to me. The next day, after finishing our breakfast, we traveled to a local hot spring resort. Enjoying the scenery, I snapped a quick photo and posted it online. And get this, those 3 obsessed girls saw it instantly. The photo showed my hand tightly held by a pale, slender hand as we strolled through a peaceful bamboo forest. Even through the phone screen, our relaxed and completely happy energy was totally undeniable. They immediately sent the picture to their assistants, demanding they pinpoint our exact location. Once they got the coordinates, all 3 ripped out their IV lines, threw on clothes, and sped to the resort, leaving a stunned Crispin behind as they bolted. Crispin dropped everything he was holding and scrambled to run after them. By the time the 3 women finally reached the resort, several hours had already passed. Beatrix and I were already done soaking in the springs and were enjoying a nice meal. Sterling Mercer, you absolute bastard. You said you were taking me here just to relax. But instead, Beatrix blushed, unable to finish her sentence. Thinking about our private activities inside the spring, her face flushed a deep, bright red. She glared at me with eyes full of intense passion. Seeing her like that made my heart race, but I knew if I did not comfort her right now, I would definitely end up sleeping on the couch tonight. Wifey, I deeply and truly realize my mistake. Do not be mad, have some food. You must be pretty exhausted by now, right? Beatrix was still puffing out her cheeks as she took an aggressive bite of the steak I was offering, glaring at me like a little predator, and chewing like she wished it was my head. She thought she looked pretty intimidating, but honestly, she was just insanely adorable. My heart was basically melting into a puddle. I kept hand-feeding her until she literally could not squeeze in another single bite, and only then did I finally start eating. When Serafina, Genevieve, and Aurelia walked in, this was the exact sight that greeted them. There I was, looking at the woman next to me, with a massive, beaming smile, my eyes filled with nothing but pure love. The incredibly sweet vibe between us felt like a massive wall that no outsider could ever hope to break through. This exact sight felt like a sharp dagger straight to their chests. It felt like they could barely breathe, remembering how those smiles used to belong only to them. The restaurant was pretty quiet right then, and the 3 of them walked over looking like they were attending a funeral. Beatrix and I were so focused on eating that we ignored them at first, thinking it was just the waiter. And here is where it gets incredibly satisfying. The second I realized they were hovering there, I looked up, and my warm smile instantly vanished into a look of absolute disgust. What are you 3 doing here again? Did I not make things completely clear to you last time? My face dropped. Watching my expression instantly flatline, the 3 girls felt another painful stab to their souls. Serafina opened her mouth timidly, saying they had come out here specifically to find me. They wanted to talk, but Beatrix immediately stepped up, asking what on earth they could possibly have to discuss with her husband. Although I had already promised her I felt absolutely nothing for these girls, she still hated the idea of leaving us alone. They had known each other for over 20 years, and she knew I was usually a pretty soft-hearted guy. The 3 women completely ignored Beatrix, keeping their eyes locked entirely on me. Not wanting them to keep bothering me forever, I agreed to step aside and talk. First, I gave Beatrix a sweet, reassuring kiss on the corner of her lips. The moment she left, I gave the remaining 3 a freezing stare, demanding they speak up immediately. My extreme double standard, being so warm to Beatrix but ice cold to them, made them feel physically ill. Outside, Beatrix was pretty bored, kicking pebbles to pass the time. Suddenly, a rather plain-looking guy in a white hoodie approached her, staring at her with dull, lifeless eyes. Thinking she was blocking him, Beatrix stepped aside. Seeing this, Crispin froze for a second, before quickly shifting back to his pathetic victim act. He asked if she was young Master Sterling's wife, but Beatrix just stared at this weird stranger without answering. Claiming he was the butler's son, he said the young master had some major misunderstandings about him. He apparently loved Miss Locke, Miss Croft, and Miss Frost. But because they treated him with a bit of extra kindness, I supposedly bullied and targeted him, a claim he made while looking like a kicked puppy. He said he only came to apologize to the young master. His only hope was that I had not rushed into marriage out of pure spite, only to regret it forever, since I was still deeply in love with those other girls. While Crispin kept racking his brain to think of more lies to completely ruin my reputation, he completely missed the fact that the woman standing in front of him now looked like a massive dark storm ready to unleash absolute hell. Seriously, are male green tea manipulators really this low tier nowadays? Unable to listen to his garbage for another second, Beatrix shut him down completely, leaving Crispin choking on his own words. He stammered that he only wanted to warn her, but she cut in, asking if those 3 girls were the losers currently pestering her husband inside. Beatrix sneered, asking why he looked like a walking corpse if they supposedly treated him so specially. They clearly did a pretty awful job taking care of him, whereas her husband had been absolutely glowing since marrying her. A literal gutter rat like him was not even worthy of shining her husband's shoes. Honestly, if she was not worried about interrupting my talk inside, she would not have wasted a single second on this complete idiot. Offended, he asked why she had to resort to insults, trying to look deeply wounded as he turned around to walk away. Calling Sterling Mercer an ungrateful jerk, wondering what gave me the right to be so incredibly lucky, immediately bagging another elite woman after walking away from 3 wealthy families. As he turned away, Crispin's face twisted into an incredibly ugly, hateful sneer while cursing me. He assumed nobody would ever catch him slipping. Now watch this. He has absolutely no clue that the glass windows reflected his ugly face like a perfect mirror. Beatrix's cold voice drifted from right behind him, warning the fake actor to never badmouth her husband again. You really do not want to see what happens when you cross me. Crispin's footsteps stuttered. Right before turning around, he noticed the glass walls had broadcast his ugly, panicking face in crisp 4K resolution. With his head hung low, he could only scurry into the restaurant in complete shame. The second he walked in, he heard Serafina, Genevieve, and Aurelia pouring their hearts out to me. They confessed their love for Sterling, making Crispin freeze in his tracks. He stood there quietly eavesdropping. Although they had spoken in perfect unison, all 3 girls desperately searched my face for any reaction. But my face remained completely expressionless as I calmly poured some tea. One of them begged, admitting she realized her feelings too late. She claimed Crispin had brainwashed her into believing I was just spoiled and arrogant, blaming herself for everything. Since we grew up together, she admitted his weak act blinded her into totally misunderstanding me. Then Serafina pulled a pearl phone charm from her pocket. She held it out, crying about breaking my heart. Still mad? Look. She handmade a brand new one to replace the one I threw away. She begged to start over. Right then, Genevieve cut in, desperately admitting that she was completely wrong too. Without wasting a second, Genevieve shoved a flashy gemstone bracelet right in my face. She said it replaced the old one I threw away. An even prettier one for her sweet little prince. Next, Aurelia whipped out a framed photo from when we turned 18. She begged me to look. She had it professionally restored. After all, we were inseparable for over 20-something years. No one knew me better than they did. She promised to keep pampering me like she always used to. All 3 stood there with arms outstretched, offering gifts, desperately waiting for my final answer. Watch this. Once they finished their sad scripts, I just let out a dry chuckle. I stared straight at Serafina. You claim we grew up together, but honestly, it feels like you grew up with Crispin. Decades of friendship, and his fake tears convinced you I was a monster? That is honestly so pathetic. I snatched her stupid pearl charm and threw it right onto the floor. Gravity did the rest. The string snapped. Plump pearls bounced and scattered in every single direction. Genevieve, do you feel any shame saying that? Back when we went camping, you drove overnight just to take them home, leaving me totally abandoned in the wild. You left me terrified. And you took the only car we had. Is that how you treat your little prince? I snatched her gemstone bracelet and smashed it hard. It shattered into a million sharp, jagged pieces, just like our bond. Shards bounced up, slicing their legs, cutting deep into their flesh right through their dresses. And Aurelia, remember when you shoved me to protect Crispin? I got severely hurt because of you. Honestly, knowing you all was the absolute worst curse of my life. I ripped that old photo out of its frame and viciously tore it to shreds. Looking at their devastated, pale faces, I delivered my final, merciless verdict. The best apology you could ever give me is to never show your faces to me again, because honestly, looking at you makes me feel like I stepped in something disgusting. You bring me nothing but trouble. like ruining my birthday banquet and making me a laughingstock. Stay out of my life forever. If you keep harassing me, I won't show a single ounce of mercy. You do not love me. You are just upset that the loyal puppy who always followed you around has finally walked away for good. Without looking back for even a split second, I walked out, spotting Crispin standing near the door. I gave him a look of absolute, pure disgust. That expression instantly shattered his fragile ego. He always hated my high and mighty gaze. Back when he used the Mercer name to sneak into the elite academy, all the rich kids looked down on him. Even though I never treated him badly, he desperately wanted to be worshipped by everyone, just like I was. He hated being mocked, knowing he was just a broke nobody polluting the school's clean air. So, he schemed to steal everything that belonged to me. Once those 3 heiresses liked him, the school began kissing his feet, but I still held my head high. I looked down on him like a clown doing cheap tricks. My existence constantly reminded him that I was born with what he begged for, and he absolutely despised me. Back at the restaurant, those 3 women just stood there, completely frozen after getting absolutely torn apart. Shards of gems had sliced into their legs, leaving blood dripping onto the floor. They stared down at the scattered pearls and the ripped photograph. Complete silence. I was never going back. They were nothing but bad luck to me, a literal curse on my life. Every word I spat out felt like a rusted, jagged knife stabbing straight into their hearts, twisting over and over until their souls were completely shredded. This was a brand new level of psychological agony for them. Not a single person moved. They just stood there with their heads down, crying silently. Soon, a small puddle of tears started pooling at their feet. After what felt like ages, Serafina finally looked up. Wiping the tears from her face, she spoke in a low, cracked whisper. She vowed that she would never give up on Sterling, promising to do whatever it took to earn his forgiveness. Genevieve immediately jumped in, refusing to believe it since they had spent decades together, day and night. There was no way he could move on so quickly. Aurelia agreed, trying to convince herself that Sterling was just too heartbroken right now. That had to be why he was lashing out, because nobody ever wins someone back on the very first try. But despite trying to sound so sure of themselves, they were actually drowning in doubt. Would refusing to quit actually make a difference? Or had he truly moved on and stopped caring about them? When they finally tried to walk, their legs had gone totally numb from standing in one spot for so long. Dragging themselves out, they did not even notice Crispin lurking nearby in the shadows like a total ghost. Now look at this guy. Crispin watched them leave, absolutely ignored, his heart burning with pure, toxic jealousy. He thought back to how he originally earned their trust by playing the hero and saving them from some street thugs. Sure, he was the one who paid those thugs to attack them, but it worked out perfectly. They welcomed him in, and his school life became a dream. His dad even scored a promotion because of his connections. Crispin learned early on that if you want something in this life, you have to be completely ruthless to take it. He whipped out his phone, quickly typed up a message, and let out a creepy, unhinged laugh. The exact moment I stepped outside, I could tell by Beatrix's face that she was incredibly annoyed with me. I practically sprinted over to her, wrapping her up in a tight, massive bear hug. Even though her frustration melted away instantly, she still tried to play tough and sound pretty annoyed. She scoffed, asking if I finally remembered I had a miserable wife waiting out here, or if I had just completely forgotten about her. I knew she was just acting, so I happily played along, calling her wifey and telling her it was time to head home. Holding her tightly by the waist, we quickly made our way over to the car. By the next morning, her legs were like jelly, leaving her stuck in bed while I happily went back to playing the perfect, doting house husband. I knew I went a bit overboard, but honestly, I would do it again in a heartbeat. I gave her massages and hand-fed her every meal. Seriously, I need to learn some self-control. I do not know how other guys do it, but this woman is just way too addictive. Crispin trailed the 3 women all the way back to the hospital. Finding them lying completely still in their beds, he forced a bright, fake smile and walked right into the room. He cheerily offered them the food he brought, but his overly energetic vibe did not even get a single reaction out of them. Freezing for a split second, he quickly covered it up, setting up the food while they ignored him. Once everything was ready, he went over and gently nudged each of them to come and eat. Since they had not eaten all day, they finally got up. Crispin hovered around like a devoted servant, serving them hand and foot. But as they watched him run around, all 3 of them had the exact same thought. If only this was Sterling instead. Once Crispin finished playing the perfect maid, they finally told him he had been a big help recently. But he was no fool. They told him he could ask for absolutely anything he wanted. Wait, let that sink in. He knew exactly what they were doing. They were cutting him off for good. If they were going to toss him aside, they would regret it. His mind raced with toxic rage, but he kept his face looking completely helpless. With tears welling up in his eyes, he asked if that was really all he was to them. Did they truly believe he only took care of them for some kind of payout? They just stared back, offering nothing but silence. Those crocodile tears, which used to work like a charm on them, had officially lost all their power. He brushed his tears away and forced a brave smile, asking if they would at least go on one final date with him tomorrow. Looking utterly heartbroken, he hung his head low and clutched his chest like his world had ended. Following a heavy silence, he looks up, pleading with them to just treat this as one last goodbye. Staring at his pretty pathetic state, Aurelia feels a tiny spark of her old pity. She simply nods and says fine. Since Serafina and Genevieve are already wavering, they trade glances upon hearing Aurelia agree, quietly nodding their approval. The next morning is beautiful and sunny, perfect for a romantic date. Crispin steps out in a white hoodie and a baseball cap, hair styled perfectly. But the girls? They just wear basic, casual outfits. Crispin is secretly furious at their total lack of effort, but he is planning an ultimate grand finale today, so he stays quiet. So the four head out. Along the entire walk, Crispin is the only one actually talking. Aurelia gives him a dry, half-hearted reply now and then, while the others stay totally silent. No matter how much he tries, they remain completely unfazed. Eventually, even he goes quiet. Thinking about how their dates used to be compared to this literal funeral procession, Crispin barely keeps his fake smile from cracking. But the girls are so drowned in their own depressive thoughts, they completely miss his creepy, psychotic glitches. You see where this is going, right? Once they arrive, Crispin deliberately guides the girls toward a very specific intersection. He scans the busy street like a hawk, until he finally spots a highly familiar license plate. Only then does he lead them onto the road. Hey Sarah, Jen, Aura, there is supposed to be an incredibly good restaurant right up ahead. Wanting to treat them to a final meal as thanks for taking care of him all these years, he asks. And they agree just to stop walking. Crispin walks slightly ahead, keeping them completely distracted so they do not notice the changing traffic lights. Disaster strikes in the blink of an eye. Crispin turns back as if to check on them, then suddenly widens his eyes and screams for them to watch out. Then bam! Crispin shoves all three girls out of the way and gets violently launched into the air by a speeding car. The three girls, who are initially annoyed about being shoved onto the pavement, look up. They freeze, seeing Crispin lying in a fast-growing pool of his own blood. They shriek in absolute horror. Snapping back to reality, Serafina quickly pulls out her phone to frantically dial for an ambulance. Cradling his broken body carefully, the other two ask him in a panic how he is feeling. As they sob his name, Crispin is mentally cursing the driver for hitting him so damn hard. But hearing them scream his name with such desperate panic, believe me, he knows his plan is a complete victory. He forces out a tragic, beautiful smile. With breath as faint as a spider web, he whispers that he is just glad they are all safe. After delivering that absolute Oscar-winning performance, he pretends to lose consciousness and black out. Right outside the emergency room, Genevieve and Aurelia pace around with pale, anxious faces, their minds in absolute chaos. They literally plan to cut him out of their lives forever, but now he is broken and bloody just to save them. Serafina runs up late, her face pale with total shock, telling them they will not believe what she found on the security cameras. They whip their heads around, demanding answers. Serafina drops the bomb the entire crash was planned. When they demand to know who did it, any remaining anger they had for Crispin instantly vanishes, replaced by pure heartache. The driver immediately fled the scene, Serafina explains. While the driver remains at large, our bodyguards managed to locate his dropped burner phone. It has a text sent directly to Sterling Mercer. She tells them to see for themselves, and they stare dead-eyed at a highly familiar phone number. The text tells young Master Sterling the job will be done flawlessly. The girls realize it is Sterling. Serafina stands frozen, only able to utter my name. Aurelia denies it, screaming that it must be fake. Aurelia furiously hurls the phone across the hallway, as if that makes it untrue, claiming she does not believe it either. She vows to confront Sterling face to face, asking if the others are coming. Genevieve simply cannot fathom that I would try to orchestrate their murders. She urges them to go, but as they prepare to storm off and find me, the operating room doors swing open. Crispin is wheeled out, and the doctor confirms his injuries are not life-threatening. He just needs plenty of proper rest and time to recover. With that, the doctor departs. The three of them stare at Crispin, who looks incredibly pale and fragile in his hospital bed, their eyes filling with intense pity. Since the anesthesia was pretty light, Crispin slowly flutters his eyes open. Seeing them gathered around, his lips curl into a weak, gentle smile. He whispers how thankful he is that none of them got hurt. Those words send a massive shockwave through their hearts. He is in this critical state, yet he only cares about them. Their anger hardens into pure steel as they promise to get justice. They tell Crispin to rest, revealing they found something at the crash site, pointing directly to Sterling Mercer. They are heading out to demand answers, convinced Sterling planned this entire horrific accident. Hearing this massive bombshell, Crispin's eyes go wide, putting on a perfect act of innocent shock. He stammers out, "Why would young Master Sterling do something so cruel to him? They just tell him to rest while they handle it." Crispin nods obediently, softly begging them to stay safe so he won't worry. He casts his gaze down, looking incredibly fragile and vulnerable. The three girls gently pat his head before turning and walking out. The second the door clicks shut, his fragile act completely vanishes. Get ready, because he smirks and tells Serafina, Genevieve, and Aurelia to go. He wants them to become mortal enemies with their beloved Sterling Mercer, hoping they literally hate each other to the grave. That is the only way his spot next to them stays secure forever. Whipping out his phone, he quickly texts his hired driver, warning him to lay low and stay hidden. Just imagining those four tearing each other apart fills Crispin with such intense joy that he completely forgets he was just run over by a car. The throbbing pain instantly fades away. Meanwhile, the girls arrive at the Vanguard estate, only to find themselves blocked at the front gates once again. But they are not playing games this time. They relentlessly spam Sterling's phone from burner numbers, and even try ramming their vehicles straight through the security gate. Annoyed to his absolute limit, Sterling finally steps outside to face them. By his side is Beatrix, flanked by a small squad of heavily armed security. To them, these three women look completely unhinged, making Beatrix deeply anxious for his safety. The moment he steps into view, Serafina immediately begins screaming questions. She asks if Sterling really hates them this much. He just stands there completely lost, having absolutely no idea what she is raving about. She cries out that they only made minor mistakes, asking if he wants them dead. Believing that he actually hired someone to run them down, Genevieve feels a sharp, crushing pain tighten in her chest. She tells him he has deeply disappointed them, while Aurelia stares at him with eyes full of absolute, heartbreaking betrayal. He stepped outside, didn't say a single word. Yet here they are, throwing these massive accusations at him. He snaps back, asking if he did not already warn them to stay out of his sight. Why are they back to yelling like feral beasts? They shout back that Crispin is in a hospital bed, calling him completely heartless for speaking like that. They accuse him of hiring a hitman. While they might overlook their own lives, they demand he pay for hurting their beloved Crispin. After listening to their chaotic rants for a while, Sterling finally decodes their crazy talk and realizes what this is actually about. Honestly, he is starting to believe these three share one single, broken brain cell. He asks if they are completely blind. How can they not see through such a painfully obvious setup? Sterling asks his wife to track down the driver. Beatrix nods and immediately orders her elite security team to hunt the entire city. Once that is set, he turns his attention back to the three brainless girls. He tells them he originally did not want to waste any time on them or Crispin. While his schemes are annoying, the real issue is their own sheer stupidity, blindly believing every single lie they are fed. With that, he pulls out his phone, unblocks them just to make a group chat, and dumps a massive folder of files inside. The second the upload finishes, he deletes the chat and blocks them again. He tells them to look at what their precious Crispin has been up to. As their phones buzz with notifications, they quickly open the files. The further they scroll, the paler their faces get. It is raw security footage from the Mercer estate. Every single time Crispin saw them nearby, he would fake a trip and collapse right in front of Sterling. The moment they helped him up, he would drop sly, manipulative remarks to play the innocent victim. And they, behaving like absolute zombies, would immediately lash out at Sterling, refusing to hear any defense while blindly shielding Crispin. Now watch their faces as the crystal-clear footage proves Crispin faked every single one of those dramatic incidents. But the final video is an absolute nuke. Those terrifying street thugs from their high school days are bowing like obedient dogs right in front of Crispin. It is blatantly obvious they knew each other extremely well. Their entire connection from the very beginning was built on a massive foundation of calculated, psychopathic lies. While they stand there with their brains completely short-circuiting, Beatrix receives an immediate update. Time to move. She offers to take them to meet the hitman. The three girls climb into the car, looking like completely soulless husks. The moment they arrive and step outside, the hired driver immediately throws himself onto the ground right at their feet. The driver started kowtowing frantically on the ground, begging for his life. He confessed that greed took over to pay off heavy gambling debts. Serafina ignored his whimpering, quickly pulled up a photo of Crispin on her phone, and shoved it right in the driver's face. She asked if this was him. The driver took one look and screamed that yes, that was the guy, even pulling out his own phone to show the texts and bank transfers. They stared closely. There it was. Crispin's incredibly vicious, highly detailed murder plot, followed by text after text mocking them for being absolutely, unfathomably stupid. Realizing they had been played like fools for years, an explosive mix of humiliation and blinding rage erupted right inside them. Pure rage, they unleashed their fury on the driver, beating him to a pulp. When they finally stopped, they looked over and saw me standing nearby, watching them behave like rabid animals. A wave of suffocating shame washed over them. Sobbing, they begged for forgiveness, offering me their very first genuine, heartfelt apology. Never again, they swore on their lives to leave me alone, then walked away. Watching them walk away, I thought to myself that as long as these three held on to their positions of power, they would always attract serious trouble. I grabbed my phone. Now get this, I forwarded a hand-picked collection of those recording files straight to the heads of the Locke, Croft, and Frost families. I left the rest to my parents, who were happy to gently nudge the process forward. Back at the hospital, the three women stared down at Crispin, who slept peacefully. Their faces looked like masks of pure rage. Bodyguards were called, and he was quickly dragged away to their newly purchased villa. They bought it for convenient visits, but the irony of its new purpose was just off the charts. Tossed into the villa, Crispin had no idea what was going on until rough hands violently jolted him awake. No screaming allowed. A heavy gag and a black hood were forced onto him. When the hood was pulled off, he found himself in a dark, damp basement, with three familiar women staring at him from their chairs. "Why do this?" he asked Sarah, Jen, and Aura. When he saved them, they should be treating him like royalty. Why was this happening? Did they uncover his secret? No, that was impossible. It happened too fast. Serafina told Crispin to look closely at this before opening his mouth, then signaled her bodyguard to wheel out a large television screen. It started playing the surveillance footage I sent them, ending with the driver's damning confession. After seeing everything, Crispin knew that any lies he tried to tell now would be completely useless. He squeezed out some pathetic tears, hoping to trigger their old pity through sheer habit. But the three of them were completely immune to his act now. No amount of fake crying could hide his psychotic malice. "Look at this." They mocked his fake injuries, asking if he wanted sympathy. They promised he would experience an endless loop of painful injuries from now on, catering perfectly to his little fetishes. Since he claimed to love luxury villas, they congratulated him because he was going to stay in this one forever. Hearing their voices dripping with sadistic malice and seeing those twisted, psychopathic smiles, Crispin felt real, paralyzing terror for the first time, realizing he should never have provoked them, begging them to let him go. He swore he would never show his face again, crying that he was deeply wrong as snot and tears smeared his face. Ugly crying didn't matter. He didn't care if he looked presentable while weeping. He loved villas, but he could easily picture the literal living hell his life would become inside this basement. The three of them turned and walked right out, not caring at all if he was actually sorry or just trying to con them again, because it honestly did not matter anymore. He was never leaving that place alive. Mentally and physically broken, the three women booked flights back to the south. They did not dare seek me out anymore. The damage done was just too catastrophic. But the exact moment they stepped inside their homes, they were hit by a devastating, unexpected blow. Gone. Just like that, they were stripped of status and kicked out of their families. The families locked them inside a highly secluded sanitarium together. Ironically, their living conditions were far worse than what Crispin faced. Since they had lost me completely, their families deemed them defective products and quickly replaced them with new heirs. Having lost absolutely everything, their minds snapped, and they fell right into deep comas. While unconscious, all three women shared the exact same terrifyingly realistic dream. From a helpless bystander perspective, they had to watch my entire agonizing life from the previous timeline play out. 2 months later, when they finally woke up, they were nothing but hollow, empty shells. At first, they still hoped to beg their families for forgiveness, but that shattered dream drained every ounce of life from their souls. They literally aged 10 years overnight. Still in their 20s, their hair turned stark white. After rotting in that sanitarium for a year, on a totally ordinary afternoon, they wrote a joint apology letter to me. Then, using torn bedsheets, they hung themselves in the bathroom. By the time the nurses found them, their bodies were already stiff. And get this, that apology letter. It never even got close to me. Someone who couldn't read mistook it for trash and burned it. By the time I heard they were dead, they were already buried. Honestly, ever since they walked out of that restaurant, I had never laid eyes on them again. To me, they were nothing. I casually cut off the voice on the other end of the line and dropped some massive news. "Mom, my wife is pregnant." Hearing that, Mother Mercer's entire world was instantly taken over by the thought of Beatrix's baby. She ordered Father Mercer to hand over the company operations immediately so they could fly north and see their son and daughter-in-law. Once we set a date for their visit, I hung up, took a deep breath, and completely swept the fate of those three right out of my head. Right at that moment, Beatrix's sweet voice drifted out from the kitchen. "Hubby, come over and try this new dish I just learned to cook."